Hello everybody, this is Catholic Dad, episode number 82, the white male patriarchy, and what's the obvious endpoint? Well, do I agree with the white male patriarchy? Probably not, but what is the endpoint of the people that actually espouse the term white male patriarchy? And you really gotta think about this in terms of people on which side of the fence they arise. Now, I'm a white male, right? And I actually have 5 boys, potentially 6, and they're actually white males. And so the people of the white male patriarchy look at me as try to pretend to be me as a father watching my boys grow up in this world. Now my children, you know, I love them and I care for them and I give them what the basic necessities of their life are, but I demand a lot of them. I make them learn a lot, I make them work hard, I make them learn how to save and invest. And these children have a choice in their life, you know, just much like everybody else does. Either they can work really, really hard and, you know, get ahead in the world, you know, like become the master of their craft, to make themselves very competent, to climb the hierarchy ladder and forge forward in the future and become successful so they can actually form a family and raise their children and pass on culture to their children like I'm trying to do to my children. Here's the problem now. If I wish this of my children, what I'm wishing of them and trying to push them towards, people who espouse the white male patriarchy narrative suddenly believe my children are the problem. And so therefore you take my children, right, and then you make a narrative which is completely fabricated, by the way. There's really no such thing as white male patriarchy, but you make a narrative that my children cannot be successful in your eyes, meaning that you cannot find respect of my children no matter what. I can think of nothing more bigoted than that, based upon A, their gender, and B, their race, you know, or at least their skin color. I mean, if we did the same thing to colored people or brown people or, you know, Asians or whatever it is, and we placed them in a box and said, listen, the only way we'll respect you is if you bow to us and don't get ahead and don't forge forward and don't make yourself competent and just essentially become useless to society. And if you end up in jail, maybe we'll respect you more. Or the other option is this. If you make something of yourself, you build your competency, you forge forward, you take on responsibility, you pick that yoke up, you forge forward and you actually make something of yourself and you become successful and you become a good father, and then suddenly you're part of the problem group. Now, I don't know if you can actually slow down and meditate about that and see the problem with your narrative. Your narrative places a whole box around a whole group of people that if they're successful, they're part of the problem. If they're not successful, they're not part of the problem. And therefore you want to tear people down. That's what the white male patriarchy crowd is. That's what the social justice warrior crowds are. These crowds are essentially about destabilizing society, tearing people down, creating up barriers amongst people so that we can not be appreciative of one another, so we cannot work together, so we cannot forge forward together, so we can't build a future together. These people are the problem. The narrative is a problem because if it was exercised in the opposite direction, could you imagine a colored woman matriarchy crowd? I mean, could you imagine if we actually espouse such nonsense? And you say it's nonsense because it's not true. Well, like, why is the white male patriarchy true? I mean, has white man, have they only done horrible things in the society, in the world? I mean, did they not invent the internal combustion engine or the refrigeration units or modern agriculture or, you know, you name it, right? Like basically all the sufferings in your life, like not all of them, but a lot of the sufferings in your life that were made less were made at the hands of highly competent, capable white men. And now they're the problem. Like you sit there in air conditioning and you say the words white male patriarchy. The only reason you're comfortable in the heat of summer is probably because there was a white man that was capable, forged forward and try to form a business. The only reason you have food supply that you can go to the store once a week and keep things cold in the refrigerator is because there were people that were white men that actually forged forward and tried to become competent. So if your whole desire is to stop people from doing that, think about the amount of suffering you're thinking about unleashing on the world. Like, if we could rewind history, think about it this way, that the white male patriarchy is the privileged class of people, and we need to tear down everything that they did. Okay, so the cathedrals of the West go away, right? Modern Christianity goes away. Okay, refrigeration units, modern agriculture, internal combustion engine, the internet, computers, microchips, you name it. it all goes away. And then is the world a better place for all you've done then? If you could have your way, the world would be in the Stone Age, or at least a lot closer to it. And it's not like the void would have been filled by other people, because here's the deal. It's a very small percentage of white males that achieve anything in terms of great accomplishments of inventing. That's called the Pareto distribution. That the people that invent and succeed and forge forward and form industry are a tiny percentile of the masses of people. And so therefore that means there's plenty of opportunity for other people to enter and forge forward and create greatness in society. Anybody can do it as long as they're capable enough and they work hard enough and they're dedicated enough. And so when you say, well, let's tear down the white males, who's going to replace them? And you gotta think about this. Perhaps somebody would, but the white males are not getting in their way. You know, the white males are working with people and trying to help society out, and you are, like, everybody's a great benefactor when anybody does anything great. It's not just white males. And so, for example, like, again, refrigeration units. If a white male invents that, is that only for white men, or is that for the entire world? That idea is for the entire world, and therefore everybody's suffering is reduced when people become great. And if your goal is to tear down the white male patriarchy, your goal is to make it so young men who happen to be white don't become great. And if they do become great, then they become tyrants and part of the problem. You have a narrative problem, because here's the problem. Every white male I've ever met, they want to succeed. They want their children to succeed. They want their children to be competent. They want children to marry a spouse and form a family. They want their children to become great, but they don't want them to just become great for the sake of becoming great. They want them to become great to make them a beacon of light in the world of darkness, that they can actually make the world a better place. And are you so pompous and arrogant that you will not accept somebody who's a great contributor to society because he happens to be white and male? Think about how arrogant that is. Think about how racist that is. Think about how bigoted that is in terms of gender inequality, right? If that happened in the opposite direction, then you would be screaming from the tops of the hills. But instead, the neo-Marxists, the postmodern type people, they scream it and yell it, and they act like it's gospel truth. When in point in fact is, if it happened in the other direction towards them, they would be screaming and yelling about how pompous, bigoted, and hateful the people were. So really, think about this. If you're screaming about the white male patriarchy, you are, by definition, bigoted, racist, and also, a genderist, or whatever you want to call it. Your heart's filled with hate. You want to destroy and take society down. And just think about it that way. Because I have little white kids, right? Little white boys, some of them. And do you not want them to be successful in this world? Because if they are, then they become part of the problem in your narrative. And so that's wrong. It's wrong in so many terms, and it needs to be said. Well, anyway, so this is Catholic Dad, just making you think about it. The people that want to create divisions amongst people, that want to tear down people upon race and gender, happen to be the social justice warrior, the white male patriarchy crowd. And they are the ones that their hearts are filled with hate and rage. And every accusation they make is just a lie in terms of the opposite sides of the aisle. So this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. Please like or subscribe, pray the Daily Rosary, and get the Mass. God bless.